Alrighty, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well and had a great weekend. Today, we're going to go over the weekly outlook for August the 4th to the 8th. Last week was a very hectic week in the overall markets with red folder news, along with a bunch of earnings. So, we'll talk about what kind of the game plan is moving forward, at least from a higher time frame perspective, and what we can be looking at coming into market open here on Monday. So, first things first, let's take a look at the key economic events coming into this week. Really, we don't have too much. The only thing that we do have is some red folder news here on Tuesday. That's going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Thursday, we have some unemployment, which is at 8:30. So barely any red folder news this week. Basically, it's just ISM and unemployment. As for the earnings calendar, what we're going to keep an eye out on, Palantir, this is on Monday after close. We have a couple semiconductors here as well. On Tuesday, AMD along with SMCI. These are going to be fairly big. I'm actually very excited for the AMD one. As for some other names like Shopify, APP, we have Uber, we have a bunch of other names that are reporting here as well. So make sure if you are trading any of these names, understand if they do have earnings, you have to be very cautious. So let's head on to the ES. For the thesis for this coming week, first sign of momentum slowing down here on the higher time frames, as you can see with the high volume as well, signaling a short-term top. What I like to see moving forward is the reaction that we have off your 6250. This is the first level of support. If we don't hold this level, I'd like to see it push all the way back down towards the previous retest level being your 6160. So for the ES here on the daily chart, as you can see, really, this is your first day that price showed a little bit of weakness here on the higher time frame. So we end up having news on this day with earnings. We had FOMC the day before. This was your first sign that price was slowing down here on the higher time frames. And then, of course, here on Friday, we end up having a nice pullback towards the downside as well. So key levels coming into this week is going to be this 6240. If we're not unable to hold this level, the next level support all the way back down in towards our previous all-time highs, which is going to be this 6160. So I'd really like to see either the buyer step in off this level for a potential mini bounce, or we're going to be looking for the dip all the way back down in towards that previous all-time highs. So that's the game plan here for ES coming into next week. As for the SPY chart, similar thesis. First sign of weakness last week in the markets. Finally got a strong pullback after a huge rally. What I like to see now is the reaction that we have off your 620 key level. If you can't hold this level, the next one's all the way back down towards your 608 here on the higher time frame. So for SPY, as you can see here, similar thing. Key levels that we have marked out on SPY is our 620. If we're able to hold your 620, we can see a potential mini bounce here back up and towards this gap fill we created, which is our 628 to our 632. If we end up breaking underneath the 620, next best level to look for a long position is going to be all the way back down in towards our 608, at least on the higher time frame perspective. So 620 all the way down towards our 608, and then we also have the top of this gap fill, which is going to be this 627. So that's the level I have marked out for the ES and SPY. Let's go on to the QQQ. Thesis for this week, first daily candle that closed below the previous candle on the daily chart, signaling a loss of momentum towards the upside. As you can see, this pullback on the daily chart with large volume. Now we're going to come back towards key levels of support. What I like to see is the reaction that we have off the 22,870 on the higher time frames. If you can hold this level, the next level is going to be all the way back down towards your 22,400 on the higher time frames. So if we look at this here on the NQ, the key levels that we have marked out on the daily chart is really just this 22,750. This 22,800. This is a key level, as you can see. Nice little pullback right in towards key levels of support here for the NQ. I would like to see kind of the buyers try and step in here on Monday. If we end up consolidating, getting back underneath the 22,800. Next level is going to be all the way back down in towards that 22,400. And I'd like to see kind of the buyer step in here, right? Still bullish, higher lows being formed for this continued push back towards the upside. So Similar thing here on the NQ. We're going to be looking, preferably, I like to see, at least from a higher time frame perspective, the retest all the way back down in towards that 22,400. As for the QQQ, the key levels that we have marked out, similar thing here, 552. If we're able to hold this level, we can see some buyers kind of step in, potential mini bounce here back up in towards this 560. If we end up creating this lower high based off of this high right here, the next level is going to be all the way back down in towards that 540, and that's where I'd like to see the buyer step in. So exact same game plan on both the major indices, at least from a higher time frame perspective, right? Eventually, I'd like to see the retest of your previous all-time highs, right? This is the logical retest level, which is going to be this 22,400. If you look at the SPY, similar thing, retest level, QQQ retest level, all the way back down in towards that 540 here as well. So those are the levels we have at least on the daily and weekly chart. Let's go into Tesla now. Tesla is just building up liquidity to both sides. As you can see, this is in between 330 and 290 on the higher time frames. What I like to see now is a break above or below that level here on the daily chart. So for Tesla, as you can see on the daily time frame, we're just building up liquidity to both sides. After earnings, we really haven't done too much. This is the top of the trend line. This is the bottom of the trend line, and you can see multiple touches. What I like to see now is really the break above its 330 or the break below the 290 for any sort of potential continuation lower here on the daily chart. If we're on the 1 hour time frame now, key levels we're going to have marked out 300 towards the downside. So if we break underneath 300, potential continuation down towards 290. As for upside coming to next week, minimum I'd like to see it above 314. Preferably I'd like to see it all the way back above this 330, at least on the daily time frame. Let's go on to the next ticker. What we have here is the semiconductors, NVDA. Right now, you can see that NVIDIA is pulling back with the overall markets, as this one is still the strongest on the higher time frames. Higher time frames. Higher time frame structure is still intact and holding key levels. What I'd like to see is it maintain above 170 or the reclaim above the 174 for continuation towards the upside. So as the market is pulling back here, overall semiconductor is still holding up the strongest. So for NVIDIA, key levels we have marked out now 174 along with this 170. This one, as with the QQQ pulling back towards key levels, NVIDIA holding up still very nicely. So what I like to see, reclaim back above this 174 for this continued push back towards the upside, or now it's going to be the hold above this 169. This is kind of the low of the trend line on the higher time frames, plus the higher low based off this 169 key level. So if we are looking for longs, preferably semiconductors, since they are still holding up. As for Apple, this one had earnings last week and now is breaking towards the downside after the long consolidation it's had. What I like to see moving forward is the reaction that we have off 200 and 296 higher time frame support levels. So for Apple, if we're looking at this on the daily chart, you can see we're breaking underneath key levels currently. Underneath this 208, this is really the consolidation period that we had here on the higher time frames. Now, as you can see, breaking this trend line here with earnings, next logical level for Apple is going to be all the way down towards just 195. So we have a couple key levels. We're just going to mark out this 200, and we're also going to mark out this 195. So I'd like to see kind of buyers step in off this 200. Buyers can step in. We can see a little bit of a mean reversion here. If not, the next best buying opportunity is going to be all the way down in towards this 196. As for AMD, one of my top watches for a bounce towards the upside. This name has been a big winner in the past few months, and expect continuation towards the upside as the market bounces. Key levels for me are the 168 for a pushback towards 180 and above. This one also does have earnings coming into this week as well. So for AMD, you can see this one has been a clear winner towards the upside. Higher time frames, very bullish, as you can see within the past 20 to 40 sessions. Really solid rally towards the upside. Most dips we can expect to get bought up here on AMD. This one coming right back in towards this gap fill that we had, 168. Now what I like to see is the reclaim back above key levels. In this case, for AMD, I'd like to see reclaim back above 174 for this continued pushback towards the upside, or maintain above this 166 for this continued pushback towards the upside here as well. So the semiconductors are still very much intact, and we're just going to keep looking for continuation. As for Meta, nice gap up with earnings last week on this name. This one is at all-time highs, but is now starting to pull back towards the previous all-time highs level. And the gap fill that it has, what I like to see now is the reaction that we have off of your previous all-time highs. So for Meta, this one had earnings last week. Nice push with this kind of cup and handle towards the upside. You can see it's selling off here right back down in towards our previous now all-time highs level. We like to see buyers step in right off this 740. If you can see the buyer step in, you can see this push back up in towards your 780. If we fail to hold this 740 key level, next level is going to be all the way back down in towards our 700, which is our daily gap. And this is basically where that earnings push happened. So for Meta, we like to see a hold of that previous all-time highs level. As for Amazon pushed down last week with bad earnings. You can now see this is back towards key levels of support. What I like to see is a reaction that we have to off your 214 and your 207 here on the higher time frame. So for Amazon, this one came close to our all-time highs. Now you can see, right, pushing back towards the downside, we're coming towards key levels of support, being our 214 along with this 207. Most likely Amazon is going to find buyers down in towards this 207 key level, since we do have a pretty big gap towards the downside. So in this case, 207 is going to be key. As long as we can remain above 207, this is basically where I'd like to see the buyers step in here on the higher time frames. As for intraday price action, what we can do is just mark out your previous day lows, and we can also mark out our previous day highs here as well. But yeah, that is going to be it for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll have a more in-depth game plan coming into market open here on Monday. As I mentioned, the pre-market preps are back. So it is back to its regular schedule program at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every single morning. So hopefully I see you guys there. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the weekend. All right, take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.